The afternoon sun beat down on the Montana dirt. Caleb Hart stood 20 paces from the hired gun, his hand hovering near his Colt. Behind him, Maggie gripped her shotgun, knowing that in 15 seconds, she would either be a widow or free. Wade Copper smiled. "You ready to die?" "Hart." Caleb's voice was ice. "One of us is." The world held its breath. Then both men moved. But this story, it started 3 days earlier when a stranger with a gun stepped off a train. August 1878, Redemption Creek, Montana territory. The apple pie sat on a wooden crate, still warm. The scent of cinnamon and brown sugar hung in the afternoon heat, sweet enough to make a man's mouth water. Maggie Sullivan stood 10 paces away. Her blue calico dress had been mended so many times the original fabric was hard to find beneath the patches. Her hands trembled as they clutched the marriage certificate, the paper already damp with sweat. Her eyes fixed on the train as it screamed its arrival. Iron wheels grinding against iron rails, steam billowing like the breath of some ancient beast. The man who had just refused her gift had not tasted a single bite. One look at her body, that was all it took. He had made his decision. 4 months ago, she had placed an advertisement in the Rocky Mountain Gazette. The words had been simple, honest. Respectable woman, 24 years of age, seeks honest husband. Hard work, shared future. No drink, no gambling, no violence. One response had come. Daniel Crawford. His letters had arrived every 2 weeks like clockwork, each one more gentle than the last. He wrote about books he had read, about the small ranch he hoped to build, about partnership instead of possession. He asked about her dreams, about what frightened her in the dark hours before dawn. He sent $200 to cover the wedding expenses and help settle her debts. She had used every cent to pay off the bank. He had promised a home, a future, a reason to hope. Now the train was stopping. Steam rolled across the platform like fog off a river. Passengers descended one by one. Families reuniting. Merchants with heavy cases. A young man with soft hands and nervous eyes. Then him. The man who stepped off the train moved like someone who had forgotten how to relax. His brown leather coat was stained with dust from 1,000 miles of travel. His hat sat low, casting shadows across a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and left out in the weather too long. A scar ran from his left cheek down to his collar, pale against sun-darkened skin. But what drew every eye, what made the platform fall silent, was the Colt 45 at his hip. The leather holster was worn smooth from use, not from sitting pretty on a shelf. This was a working gun, a killing gun. The man did not look at Maggie, not at first. His eyes swept the platform, cataloging faces, searching for threats, measuring distances. The habit of a man who had lived too long with violence as a companion. On the far side of the platform, the town watched. Mrs. Vernon Pike stood near the water tower, her hands folded across her considerable bosom. Her mouth curved in a smile that held no warmth. She whispered something to Mrs. Henderson, and both women laughed behind their gloved hands. Vernon Pike himself leaned against the station wall, whittling a piece of wood with a knife that caught the sunlight and threw it back like a threat. His eyes never left the stranger, never left Maggie. Old Hank Brennan stood apart from the others, his left sleeve pinned up where his arm had been before Gettysburg took it. His younger brother Daniel had stayed back east after the war, but Hank often spoke of him with pride. His weathered face held something the others did not: sympathy, understanding, the recognition of one survivor watching another. This town had unspoken laws. Outsiders were not welcome, especially not women like Maggie. Her flaw, as the town called it, was obvious to anyone with eyes. She was not tall, not beautiful by the standards of parlor magazines and Sunday socials. Her shoulders were broad. Her hips were fuller than fashion dictated. Her hands were calloused from work that ladies were not supposed to do. In 1878, in a town like Redemption Creek, this was enough. Enough to be whispered about. Enough to be mocked. Enough to be alone. When word had spread that she had placed an advertisement for a husband, the laughter had been loud enough to hear from one end of Main Street to the other. Who would marry a woman like that, they had said. But Maggie had not begged, had not cried. She had held her head high and waited. And now her answer had arrived. The stranger turned. His eyes found hers. They were the color of a winter sky just before snow, pale gray and cold. But deep in them, buried beneath layers of caution and control, something else flickered. something that might have been sorrow. He removed his hat, slowly revealing brown hair streaked with gray at the temples. He could not have been more than 34, but he looked older. Looked like a man who had lived several lifetimes in those years, and none of them easy. Vernon Pike pushed away from the wall and approached his boots loud on the wooden platform. "You got a name, stranger?" The man's voice was low, rough as gravel underfoot. "Name's Caleb Hart. I'm looking for Margaret Sullivan." The platform fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Maggie stepped forward, her heart hammered against her ribs hard enough to hurt. "I am Margaret Sullivan, but you are not Daniel Crawford." Caleb Hart looked at her fully for the first time. Really looked. Not at her body. Not at what the town saw when they looked at her. He looked at her eyes, at the set of her shoulders, at the way she held herself despite the fear he could surely see in her face. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "I am not." The world tilted. Maggie's fingers tightened on the marriage certificate until the paper crumpled. "Then where is he?" Caleb Hart reached into his coat. The movement was slow, deliberate, giving her time to see that he was not reaching for his gun. He withdrew an envelope weathered and stained from travel. He placed it on the wooden crate beside the untouched, she keeping distance between them, respecting the space that fear required. "Daniel Crawford died 3 weeks ago in Denver. Pneumonia. It took him fast." The words landed like blows. Maggie's vision blurred at the edges. She gripped the edge of the crate to keep from falling, her knuckles white against the splintered wood. The man she had written to for 4 months. The man whose words had become a lifeline in the long Montana winter. The man who had given her hope when hope seemed like a luxury she could not afford. Gone. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Then why are you here?" Before Caleb could answer, Vernon Pike stepped closer. He was a tall man, broad in the way that comes from good food and easy living rather than hard work. His face was fleshed and florid, his eyes small and sharp, like a pig watching slaughter day approach. "That is an excellent question, Miss Sullivan." He smiled, showing teeth. "Or should I say Miss Sullivan again? Seems you will not be getting married after all." Murmurs rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. Mrs. Pike's laugh was high and bright and cruel. Caleb's eyes shifted to Vernon. The temperature on the platform seemed to drop 10 degrees. "The lady asked me a question. I will answer her. Not you." Vernon's smile did not waver, but something dangerous flickered behind it. "I am Vernon Pike. I own the bank in this town. I own half the businesses. When a stranger arrives with a gun on his hip and starts making demands, I take an interest. I made no demands. I answered a summons. From a dead man." Caleb's jaw tightened. He turned back to Maggie, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. Not gentle exactly, but measured. Careful. "Daniel Crawford was the best friend I ever had. We fought together in the war. At Shiloh in '62, he pulled me off that battlefield with a bullet in my shoulder and a rebel bayonet coming for my throat. He took a bullet in his leg doing it, limped the rest of his life because of me." He paused, and Maggie saw something flicker across his face. Pain, old and deep and never quite healed. "When he was dying, he made me promise to come in his place. He knew you had sent money, knew you were depending on this marriage. He did not want you left alone." Maggie's throat tightened. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to run, but she did none of those things. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing, that the world did not stop for grief. "So you came out of obligation." Her voice was steady now, harder. "Out of pity. Out of debt," Caleb said. "I owe Daniel my life. I cannot repay him, but I can keep my promise to him." Vernon Pike laughed. The sound was ugly, meant to wound. "This is absurd. Crawford is dead. The arrangement is void. Miss Sullivan, you would be mine to accept that and move on." He turned to the gathered crowd, playing to them like an actor on a stage. "Perhaps this is for the best. Crawford clearly had, shall we say, unique tastes in women. No doubt he struggled to find a wife in Denver, just as our dear Margaret has struggled here." The words hit their mark. Maggie felt heat rise to her face, shame and anger mixing into something that burned in her chest. But she did not lower her eyes, did not give Vernon the satisfaction of seeing her break. Mrs. Henderson tittered behind her fan. Poor thing, at least she tried. Caleb Hart's hand moved. Not to his gun, to his hat which he had been holding at his side, but on. He placed it carefully on the crate next to the envelope and looked at Vernon Pike with eyes that could have frozen a river in August. Pike, his voice cut through the laughter like a knife through silk. Miss Sullivan does not require your assessment of her value. Vernon's smile slipped. Oh, and who are you to speak for her? You just arrived on that train. You know nothing about this town or the people in it. I know enough. Caleb's voice remained level, but something in it made the crowd take a step back. I know a bully when I see one. I know a coward who hides behind money and status because he has nothing else to recommend him. And I know that Miss Sullivan deserves better than your contempt. The platform went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Vernon's face darkened. You are making a mistake, stranger. Would not be the first time. Vernon turned to Maggie, his voice dripping false concern. Miss Sullivan, surely you cannot be considering going through with this charade. This man is not the one you corresponded with. He is, by his own admission, a friend fulfilling an obligation. Do you truly wish to bind yourself to a stranger out of desperation? It was the word desperation that did it. The way he said it, like it was something dirty, something shameful. Maggie lifted her chin and met Vernon's gaze without flinching. Mr. Pike Daniel Crawford was more of a gentleman in his letters than you have been in all the years I have known you. A flush crept up Vernon's neck. Careful, girl. That tongue of yours will get you in trouble. The only trouble I have ever had in this town came from people like you. Vernon Pike's eyes narrowed. He took a step closer to Maggie, close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath despite the early hour. Is that so? And tell me, Miss Sullivan, what exactly have people like me done to you? You have tried to take my land. You have spread lies about my father's debts. You have made it impossible for me to get credit at any store in town unless I pay twice what anyone else pays. You have done everything in your power to drive me out since the day my father died. Your father left you with nothing but debt and a piece of land too poor to farm. I offered to buy it from you at a fair price. That is called business, not persecution. You offered me half what it was worth, and you know it. Vernon's smile returned sharp and cold. Property is worth what someone will pay for it. And who else is going to buy land from a woman with no husband, no family, no prospects? That is enough. Caleb's voice was quiet, but it carried across the platform like thunder before a storm. Vernon turned slowly. This is not your concern, Hart. You are wrong about that. Oh, and why is that? Caleb looked at Maggie. Their eyes met and held. She saw something in his gaze that she had not expected. Respect, recognition, the acknowledgement of one survivor seeing another. The wedding is still scheduled for 6 o'clock this evening, is it not? He asked. Vernon blinked, thrown off balance. Reverend O'Shea made the arrangements, yes, but surely you cannot think. Then we will be married at 6 o'clock. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. The ripples spread outward, touching everyone on the platform. Mrs. Pike's mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. Mrs. Henderson actually gasped. Maggie stared at Caleb Hart, unable to speak, unable to process what she had just heard. Vernon recovered first. This is ridiculous. You just stepped off that train. You do not know this woman. You owe her nothing. I owe Daniel Crawford everything. He asked me to make sure Miss Sullivan was protected, that she had a name, that she had time to secure her property without the likes of you circling like vultures. Caleb's voice never rose, but each word landed with the weight of iron. I intend to honor that request. Vernon's face went dark with fury. A marriage of convenience, a legal fiction. The whole town will know. Montana law does not require love for a marriage to be legal, Pike. Only consent and proper documentation. Caleb turned to Maggie. His expression softened, though only slightly. Miss Sullivan, I understand this is not what you expected, not what you hoped for. I am not Daniel. I will never be him. But I am here and I am willing to help you keep what is yours. Maggie found her voice. It came out rough, uncertain. This is charity. This is payment of a debt. To a dead man. The best kind of debt to pay. The dead cannot forgive you if you fail. Something in those words and the bleak honesty of them made Maggie look at him differently. This was not a man who did things lightly, not a man who made promises he did not intend to keep, but still, a marriage to a stranger, a man with a gun and scars and eyes that had seen too much death. What kind of marriage? She asked. Caleb glanced at the watching crowd, then back at her. One we can discuss in private, but if you agree, we will stand before Reverend O'Shea at 6 o'clock and make it legal in the eyes of God and the law. What happens after that is up to you. Vernon Pike stepped between them. This is in I will not allow it. You have no say in the matter. I am the president of the town council. I have authority here. Caleb's smile was thin and cold. Then use it. Call the sheriff. Have me arrested for the crime of offering to marry a woman who needs a husband. I am sure that will make you very popular. Vernon's hand moved toward his coat. Caleb's hand moved toward his gun. The movement was so fast Maggie barely saw it, but suddenly Caleb's palm rested on the butt of his Colt, and the entire platform froze. Do not. Caleb's voice was soft. Please do not. Vernon's hand stopped. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other, and Maggie saw something pass between them. Understanding. Vernon Pike was a man who bullied with money and influence. Caleb Hart was a man who had killed. The difference was written in every line of their bodies. Vernon lowered his hand and stepped back. You are making an enemy today, Hart. I have made enemies before. I am still here. They are not. Vernon turned on his heel and stalked away. His wife followed, gathering her skirts with an indignant huff. The crowd began to disperse, whispers spreading like wildfire. Only Hank Brennan remained. The old soldier limped forward, his weathered face creased with something that might have been approval. Welcome to Redemption Creek, Hart. He extended his right hand. Name's Hank. If you need anything, you come find me. Caleb shook his hand, and Maggie saw understanding pass between the two men. Recognition. Two soldiers meeting on neutral ground. Appreciate it, Caleb said. Hank nodded to Maggie. Ma'am, you could do worse. Then he too was gone, leaving Maggie and Caleb alone on the platform with an untouched pie and an unopened letter. Maggie's hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. The paper was soft with handling, as though it had been read many times. Her name was written on the front in Daniel's careful script, each letter formed with precision. She broke the seal and unfolded the pages inside. Daniel's voice seemed to rise from the paper, gentle and kind, the voice she had fallen in love with, even though she had never heard it spoken aloud. My dearest Maggie, it began. If you are reading this, then I am gone. I am sorry for the dreams I cannot give you. I am sorry for the life we will not share. I am sorry for leaving you alone when I promised I would not. But I have done what I can. Caleb Hart is the finest man I have ever known. He is hard. He has done things that haunt him. He has seen more death than any man should. But he is honorable in ways that most men only pretend to be. He will not touch you unless you ask. He will not stay unless you want him to. But he will protect you with his life. That is the one certainty I can give you. If there is a heaven, I will wait for you there. If there is not, then know that your letters were heaven enough for me. Yours always, Daniel. The tears came then, not for Daniel exactly. She had never known him, not really. She had loved his words, his kindness, the hope he represented. But she had not loved him. The tears were for herself, for the loneliness, for the desperation that had driven her to place that advertisement in the first place, for the future she had imagined that would never come to pass. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her pocket. When she looked up, Caleb was watching her with those winter sky eyes, patient and still. If I agreed to this, she said slowly, what kind of marriage would it be? The kind you need it to be. That is not an answer. Caleb glanced at the train, which had begun to pull away, steam and smoke filling the air. When he looked back at her, something in his face had shifted. He looked tired, old. I will work your land, fix what needs fixing, make sure the bank leaves you alone. I will sleep in the barn, eat separately. When my business here is finished, I will leave if that is what you want. The marriage will be legal on paper. What it is in truth is up to you. What business? Trouble follows men like me. I need time to settle it. Maggie's heart sank. Will this trouble come here, to my home? I will do everything in my power to prevent that. But I will not lie to you. There are men looking for me. I have made enemies. What kind of enemies? The kind that do not forgive. Maggie studied him. The gun, the scars, the way he stood like a man expecting an attack at any moment. This was not the gentle farmer she had imagined. This was something else entirely. But Vernon Pike was circling her property like a wolf waiting for weakness. The bank would eventually find another reason to demand payment. The town would never accept a woman alone. She needed protection, legal protection. And this man, this stranger with death in his eyes, was offering it. I have conditions, she said. Name them. No drinking, no gambling, no violence unless it is in defense. Agreed. And if I ask you to leave, you leave. No arguments. You have my word. Maggie took a deep breath. The afternoon sun was beginning its long slide toward evening. In a few hours, she would either be married or she would be alone again, facing Vernon Pike's predations, with nothing but her pride to protect her. Pride would not pay the bank, would not keep the land, would not survive the winter. Then we will be married at 6 o'clock, she said. Something flickered in Caleb's eyes. Relief, perhaps, or maybe just acknowledgement. I will not disappoint you, ma'am. You cannot disappoint me, Mr. Hart. I have no expectations. Then I cannot fail. He picked up his hat and placed it on his head, the brim shadowing his face once more. I will see you at the church. He turned to leave, then paused. The pie. May I? Maggie blinked, thrown by the question. What? The pie you brought. May I take it? I baked it for Daniel. I know, but it would be a shame to waste it. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Caleb picked up the pie, carefully cradling it like something precious. Thank you, ma'am. Then he was gone, walking down Main Street with the slow, measured pace of a man who never hurried because he was always ready. Maggie stood alone on the platform. The train was gone. The crowd was gone. Even the whispers had faded into the late afternoon heat. She looked down at the marriage certificate in her hands. The ink had smudged where her sweat had dampened the paper. Margaret Sullivan, it read, soon to be Margaret Hart. She folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket next to Daniel's letter. Then she turned and began the long walk home, wondering what she had just agreed to and whether she would live to regret it. The house sat on the edge of town alone on 160 acres of Montana grassland that stretched toward mountains so distant they looked like clouds on the horizon. Her father had built it with his own hands in 1869, after the war, after her mother died, after everything that mattered to him had been reduced to ash and memory. Thomas Sullivan had brought his daughter west looking for a fresh start. He had found hard work and harder winters and a town that never quite accepted outsiders. But he had given Maggie something more valuable than acceptance. He had given her skills. How to plant, how to harvest, how to mend fences and birth calves and shoot straight when coyotes came for the chickens, how to survive alone. But he had not taught her how to survive without him. Maggie walked through the empty house, her footsteps echoing on bare wood floors. The furniture was sparse, a table her father had built. 4 chairs, though only one had been used in the year since his death. A bed in the small room that had been hers since childhood. Another bed in the room where her father had died last winter, coughing blood into rags while she held his hand and prayed for a mercy that never came. She went to the cedar chest at the foot of her bed and lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in muslin, was her mother's wedding dress. Sarah Sullivan had worn it in 1852 when she married a young veteran with dreams of farming and a smile that could light up a room. The dress was cream silk, yellowed with age but carefully preserved. Simple, elegant, a dress for a woman who believed in love. Maggie lifted it out and held it up to the fading light. It would be tight across the shoulders, snug at the hips. Her mother had been smaller, more delicate. But it would fit, it would have to. She changed slowly, fastening each button with fingers that wanted to shake but would not allow themselves the weakness. When she was done, she stood before the small mirror on the wall and looked at herself. The woman staring back was pale, frightened, but her chin was lifted, her shoulders were straight, her eyes were drooping. This is not surrender, she told her reflection. This is survival. The words did not make her feel better, but they made her feel stronger. That would have to be enough. She braided her hair and pinned it up the way her mother had taught her. She washed her face and hands. She put on her mother's pearl earrings, the only jewelry she owned. At 5:30, she left the house and began walking toward town. The church was small, built of rough-cut timber and faith. Candles flickered in the windows as evening approached warm against the gathering dark. A handful of townspeople had gathered drawn by curiosity more than goodwill. They wanted to see the spectacle, the desperate woman marrying a stranger with a gun. Maggie walked up the steps with her head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing shame or doubt. Inside, Reverend Patrick O'Shea stood near the altar, his face creased with concern. He was a good man, the Reverend, Irish Catholic in a mostly Protestant town, which meant he understood what it was like to be on the outside looking in. "Miss Sullivan," he said gently, "are you certain about this?" "I am certain I have no better options, Father." "That is not the same as being certain. It will have to do." Vernon Pike sat in the back row, his wife beside him. Their expressions were smug, satisfied. They had come to watch her humiliation, to witness the moment when the stranger changed his mind and left her standing alone at the altar. But then the door opened and Caleb Hart walked in. He had cleaned up, shaved, changed into a fresh white shirt and a brown vest that looked like it had been new once a long time ago. His boots were polished, his hair was combed back, but the gun was still there, still riding his hip like a permanent shadow. He walked down the aisle with that same measured pace, his eyes scanning the room, cataloging faces, assessing threats. When he reached the altar, he turned and looked at Maggie. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not love, not even affection, but understanding, recognition. Two people doing what needed to be done to survive. Reverend O'Shea cleared his throat. "We are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." His voice continued, familiar words made strange by circumstance. Maggie barely heard them. Her attention was fixed on the man standing beside her. On the way, his hands hung loose at his sides, relaxed but ready. On the scars she could see, now peeking out from his collar and cuffs. On the sadness that lived behind his eyes like something he carried everywhere and could never put down. "Caleb Hart, do you take Margaret Sullivan to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Caleb's voice was steady. "I do." "Margaret Sullivan, do you take Caleb Hart to be your lawfully wedded husband?" This was it, the moment, the choice that would change everything or change nothing. Maggie thought of her father's grave on the hill behind the house, of the land he had worked until it killed him, of the dreams he had dreamed and the sacrifices he had made so she could have something of her own. She thought of Vernon Pike's smile and the way he looked at her land like it already belonged to him. She thought of Daniel Crawford lying in a grave in Denver, his last thought about a woman he had never met but had tried to protect anyway. "I do." Reverend O'Shea held out the ring. It was simple silver, worn smooth with age. Caleb took it carefully and reached for Maggie's left hand. His hand was large, calloused, warm. He slid the ring onto her finger with a gentleness that surprised her. His touch was careful, almost reverent. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife." The Reverend paused, looking between them uncertainly. "You may kiss the bride." Caleb shook his head slightly. "We will save that for another time, Reverend." Patrick O'Shea looked relieved. "Then may God bless this union and grant you both peace." It was done. Maggie was married. The walk back outside felt like moving through water. Everything was muted, distant. The townspeople filed past, some offering stiff congratulations, most saying nothing at all. Vernon Pike stopped in front of them, his face hard. "This will not last," he said quietly. "Marriages built on desperation never do." Caleb's reply was equally quiet. "Then I suppose we will see." Vernon and his wife left. The others followed. Soon it was just Maggie and Caleb standing in front of the church as night settled over Redemption Creek like a blanket. "I took a room at the boarding house," Caleb said. "2 rooms, actually. I will stay there tonight. Give you time to think, to be certain. I am already married to you. What is there to think about? Whether you want me to come home." The word home hung between them. Strange, intimate, frightening. "There is a spare room," Maggie said slowly. "My father's room. You could use it. The barn would be better. I am not accustomed to sleeping indoors." "Why not there? Too easy to be trapped. Too hard to see what is coming." The honesty of it, the bleakness, made her chest ache. "Then sleep where you feel safe," she said. "But tomorrow we need to discuss what comes next." Caleb nodded. Tomorrow. He tipped his hat to her and turned to leave. Then he stopped. The pie, he said. I ate it. And it was the best thing I have tasted in 5 years. Then he walked away into the darkness, leaving Maggie standing alone outside the church where she had just married a stranger. She looked down at the silver ring on her finger. It caught the moonlight and threw it back bright and cold. Mrs. Margaret Hart, she thought, wife of Caleb Hart, woman who made decisions out of desperation and called it survival. She walked home alone, the wedding dress rustling around her ankles, wondering what dawn would bring, and whether the man she had married would still be there to see it. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The sound was lonely and wild, and perfectly suited to the moment. Maggie did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing. But as she walked, she allowed herself one small hope. Maybe this would work. Maybe Caleb Hart would keep his promises. Maybe she would not have to face Vernon Pike alone for one. Maybe she had not made a terrible mistake. The house was dark when she arrived. Empty. Cold. She changed out of the wedding dress and hung it carefully back in the cedar chest. She braided her hair. She washed her face. And then she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind move through the grass outside, wondering where Caleb Hart was sleeping and whether he was staring at stars and thinking about the promises he had made to a dead man. Sleep came slowly. When it finally arrived, it brought dreams of gunfire and smoke and a man with winter eyes standing between her and something dark that she could not quite see. She woke to the sound of hammering. Dawn had barely broken the sky, still more gray than blue. But when Maggie went to the window, she saw him. Caleb Hart working on the fence that ran along the eastern edge of her property. His vest was gone. His sleeves were rolled up. Sweat darkened his shirt despite the morning cool. He moved with efficiency, no wasted motion. Measure, cut, hammer. Move to the next post, again and again, steady as a heartbeat. Maggie dressed quickly and went outside. The grass was wet with dew. The air smelled of sage and distant rain that would probably never come. Caleb looked up as she approached. He did not smile, but he nodded. Acknowledgement. Respect. Fence was falling prone, he said. Thought I would fix it. You did not have to start so early. I am used to early. She stood watching him work for a moment. His body was lean, muscular, in the way of men who worked hard rather than men who worked for appearance. But what struck her were the scars. They were everywhere, long, pale lines across his forearms, a puckered mark on his left shoulder that could only be an old bullet wound, another on his side just visible when his shirt pulled tight. This was a man who had survived things that should have killed him. I will bring you breakfast, she said. You do not need to trouble yourself. You are working my land. The least I can do is feed you. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. Appreciated, ma'am. Maggie. You can call me Maggie. He hesitated, then nodded. Maggie. Her name in his rough voice sounded different, softer somehow. She went back inside and made coffee and biscuits and bacon. Simple food, but good. When she brought it out, Caleb had already repaired 6 fence posts. He ate standing up, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon, always watching, always ready. What are you looking for? She asked. Trouble. Is it coming? It always comes. They ate in silence, not uncomfortable, just quiet, 2 people learning the shape of each other's presence. When he finished, he handed her the empty plate. Thank you. You are welcome. He turned back to the fence, then paused. Your father did good work here. The bones are solid, just needs attention. Maggie felt something loosen in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or relief that someone else saw what her father had built and recognized its worth. He tried, she said. But alone it was too much. It is always too much alone. The words felt weighted, personal. Caleb picked up his hammer and went back to work. Maggie stood there a moment longer, watching him, this stranger, who was now her husband, this man with death in his past and promises in his present. Then she went back inside to begin her own work, wondering how long this arrangement would last and what would happen when the trouble he expected finally arrived. The answer came sooner than either of them anticipated. That evening, just as the sun touched the western mountains, hoofbeats sounded in the distance. Caleb was instantly alert. His hand moved to his gun, his body shifting into a stance Maggie recognized from watching soldiers during the war. Ready, dangerous. An old man rode up on a tired horse, Hank Brennan. His face was gray with pain or fear or both. "Hart," he said, breathing hard. "They are coming." Caleb's voice went flat. "Who?" "Vernon Pike hired 3 men out of Wyoming. Gunfighters. They arrived this afternoon asking questions about you. They are staying at the saloon." Maggie's blood went cold. "Why?" Hank looked at her with something like pity. "Pike wants Hart gone. Dead or run off does not matter. With Hart gone, you lose your protection. Pike can move on your land." Caleb's jaw tightened. "When?" "Tonight, maybe tomorrow. They were drinking when I left." "How many for certain?" "3 that I saw. Could be more." Caleb nodded slowly. Then he turned to Maggie. "Get inside, lock the doors. If shooting starts, get down and stay down. I am not hiding while men come to kill my husband." The word husband seemed to surprise them both. Caleb's expression softened slightly. "Maggie, this is not your fight. This is my land, my home. That makes it my fight." She went inside and came back with her father's shotgun. Caleb's eyes widened slightly. "You know how to use that?" Maggie loaded both barrels with practiced ease. "My father taught me to shoot before he taught me to read." Something that might have been respect flickered across Caleb's face. "All right then, but you stay behind cover. No heroics." "Same to you." Hank dismounted, favoring his bad leg. "I will stand with you." Caleb shook his head. "Hank, you have done enough. This is not your battle." "The hell it is not. I am tired of men like Pike running this town. Tired of watching good people get pushed around." He pulled a revolver from his coat. "Besides, I owe you." "You do not owe me anything. You married that girl to protect her. That is the kind of man I will stand beside." Caleb looked between them. Hank with his missing arm and his stubborn courage. Maggie with her shotgun and her lifted chin. "All right," he said quietly. "We make our stand here." They spent the next hour preparing, barricading windows, positioning furniture for cover, loading weapons, planning fields of fire. Maggie worked alongside the men, her fear sharpening into focus. This was happening. Men were coming to kill them, and she would fight back or die trying. As darkness fell, they took their positions. Caleb by the front window, Hank at the back, Maggie upstairs with a clear view of the approach. The night was silent, too silent. Maggie's hands were steady on the shotgun. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears. She thought about her father, about Daniel Crawford, about the strange turns that had brought her to this moment. An hour passed, then another. Nothing. Caleb's voice drifted up from below. "Could be they are waiting for us to relax. Or they could be coming tomorrow," Hank replied. More silence. Then far in the distance, a sound, faint but unmistakable. Hoofbeats. Caleb's voice was calm. "Here they come. Remember, do not fire until I give the word." Maggie tightened her grip on the shotgun and waited for her new life to be tested by fire. The hoofbeats grew louder. 3 riders materialized from the darkness, moving slow and deliberate. They stopped at the edge of the property, just beyond effective rifle range. Smart, professional. Caleb watched them through the window, his face carved from stone. They are not drunk cowboys. These are men who know their business. One rider moved forward alone. Tall, broad-shouldered, sitting his horse like a man who had spent more time in the saddle than out of it. Even in the moonlight, Maggie could see the guns at his hips. 2 of them. "Caleb Hart." The voice carried across the grass, strong and clear. "My name is Wade Copper. I have been hired to deliver a message." Caleb said nothing, waiting. "Mr. Vernon Pike offers you $500 to leave Redemption Creek tonight. No questions asked. No trouble." Still Caleb remained silent. Wade Copper shifted in his saddle. "That is generous money, Hart. More than generous for a marriage that is not even a week old. Take it, ride out. Find some other town to haunt." Caleb's voice came low and cold. "Tell Pike his money is no good here." A pause. Then Wade Copper laughed. "I told him you would say that. Told him you were the stubborn type." The laughter died. "So here is the other message. You have until sunrise to leave. If you are still here when the sun comes up, We will come for you, and we will not be offering money. Come now if you want. Save us all the waiting. Oh, we will come, but not tonight. Tonight you get to think about it. Think about that woman in there. Think about whether your pride is worth her life. The words hit like a fist. Maggie felt ice spread through her chest. Wade Copper turned his horse. Sunrise Heart. Be smart. The three riders disappeared into the darkness. The hoofbeats faded until there was nothing but wind and silence and the hammering of Maggie's heart. Caleb stepped back from the window. His face was grim. They will come, at first or first light probably. They want us tired, want us to spend the night afraid. Hank spat on the floor. Professional killers. Pike must be paying them well. He is paying them to kill me, but he is smart enough to make it look like self-defense. They will provoke a fight, make sure there are witnesses who can say I drew first. Maggie came down the stairs still holding the shotgun. Then we do not give them the fight they want. Caleb turned to her. Maggie, you need to leave tonight. Go to Hank's place or the church, somewhere safe. This is between me and them. No, this is not a discussion. You are right, it is not. Maggie's voice was steel. This is my land, my home. I will not run from it because Vernon Pike hired thugs to frighten me. They are not here to frighten you. They are here to kill me, and they will not care if you are in the way. Then I will not be in the way. I will be fighting beside you. Caleb's jaw worked. Frustration and something else warred in his expression. You do not understand what these men are capable of. And you do not understand what I am capable of. They stared at each other. Hank cleared his throat. The lady has made her choice hard. Best to accept it. Caleb looked at Maggie for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Right, but we do this smart. We fortify, we prepare, and when they come, we make them regret Vernon Pike ever hired them. They worked through the night. Caleb moved furniture, created firing positions, mapped out fields of fire. He worked with the precision of a man who had done this before many times in many places. Maggie watched and learned, watched how he thought 3 steps ahead, how he anticipated angles and approaches, how he turned a simple farmhouse into a fortress. Around midnight, Hank made coffee. They sat in the kitchen, weapons close, ears tuned to every sound outside. Tell me about Vernon Pike, Caleb said. Why does he want your land so badly? Maggie wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. There is a stream that runs through my property. In summer, when everything else dries up, it still flows. Pike owns the land on 3 sides of mine. If he had my land, he would control the only reliable water source for miles. Water is worth killing for out here. It is worth more than gold. Caleb nodded slowly, and he has been trying to buy you out. For a year since my father died. He started with offers, then threats. Then he used his position at the bank to make things difficult. When the advertisement for a husband appeared in the paper, he must have known his time was running out. So he hires guns to remove the obstacle. Me. You married me. That makes you the obstacle. Something flickered in Caleb's eyes. I did not think about it that way. I thought I was helping. Instead, I painted a target on both of us. You did help. Without you, I would be alone facing this. Now I have someone who knows how to fight back. Fighting back might get you killed. Being alone definitely would. They sat in silence. Outside, the darkness was absolute. No moon now, just stars in the endless Montana night. Why did Daniel send you? Maggie asked quietly. Of all the people he could have asked, why you... Caleb stared into his coffee. When he spoke, his voice was distant. Daniel saved my life at Shiloh. Pulled me off that field with bullets flying and death everywhere. I asked him once why he did it, why he risked his life for someone he barely knew. He paused. He said every life is worth saving, even ones that do not think so. He was a good man, the best I ever knew. Were you friends after the war? We kept in touch, letters mostly. He went to Denver, opened a bookstore, said he had seen enough of killing and wanted to surround himself with words instead of weapons. Caleb's mouth twisted. I told him I did not have that luxury. Why not? Caleb looked at her, really looked. His eyes held old pain and older ghosts. Because some of us are better at killing than living. And the world needs men like that, men who do the ugly things so decent people can sleep at night. That is a lonely way to live. Yes, it is. Maggie wanted to ask more, wanted to understand this man who had stepped off a train and into her life with a gun and a promise. But Hank was there, and the dawn was coming, and soon there would be no time for questions. You should rest, Caleb said. Both of you, I will keep watch. When will you rest? I will rest when this is over. Maggie knew better than to argue. She went upstairs and lay on her bed, still dressed, shotgun beside her. Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion won and she drifted into uneasy dreams of gunfire and blood. She woke to voices downstairs, men's voices, angry. Maggie grabbed her shotgun and ran to the stairs. In the kitchen, Caleb faced three men she had never seen before, but Reverend Patrick O'Shea was there too, standing between them like a shield. I will not allow violence in my presence, Patrick was saying, his Irish brogue thick with anger. These men came to my door claiming Mr. Hart was a danger to the town. I came to hear his side. One of the men, tall and scarred, sneered. You are wasting your time, Padre. Hart is a killer. Always has been. Always will be. Caleb's voice was calm. Wade Copper, you brought friends. Wanted witnesses. When you die, I want everyone to know you drew first. Patrick turned to Caleb. Mr. Hart, these men claim you are wanted for murder in Wyoming. Is this true? No. He is lying, Wade Copper said. He killed a rancher named Raymond Pike 2 years ago. Killed him in cold blood. Caleb's expression did not change. Raymond Pike was a cattle rustler. He and his men were stealing stock. I was hired to stop them. Pike drew on me. I was faster. The shooting was ruled justified by the territorial marshal. Justified, Wade spat the word. You murdered him. I defended myself and the property I was hired to protect. There is a difference. Maggie came down the stairs, shotgun in hand. All eyes turned to her. Gentlemen, she said quietly, this is my home. If you have business with my husband, conduct it outside. Wade Copper's eyes narrowed. Your husband, you married this killer knowing what he is. I married Caleb Hart knowing he is a man of his word, which is more than I can say for the cowards Vernon Pike hired to do his dirty work. Wade's face darkened. Careful, woman. You are making this personal. It became personal when you threatened my home. One of Wade's companions, a younger man with cold eyes, laughed. She has fire. Too bad it will not save her. Caleb moved. One moment he was standing still. The next his gun was in his hand, cocked, and aimed at the young man's chest. The movement was so fast Maggie barely saw it. Touch her, Caleb said softly, and you will die before you hit the ground. The room froze. Wade Copper's hand hovered near his gun. Patrick O'Shea had gone pale. The young gunman stared down the barrel of Caleb's Colt with wide eyes. We are leaving, Wade said slowly, but this is not over, Hart. Sunrise. Like I said, be here or run. Either way, this ends today. They backed toward the door. Caleb's gun never wavered. When they were gone, he lowered the weapon and turned to Patrick. I am sorry you had to see that, Reverend. Patrick's hands were shaking. Mr. Hart, I came here hoping to find a peaceful resolution, but I see now there is none to be had. Pike will not stop until he gets what he wants. And what does he want? My land, Maggie said. He wants me gone and my property in his hands. Patrick looked between them. This is about water rights. It is about greed and power, and the belief that money can buy anything. The Reverend was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened his shoulders. Then I will bear witness. When this is over, I will testify to what I saw, that you were threatened, that you acted in self-defense. Caleb shook his head. Reverend, that could make you a target. I have been a target before Mr. Hart. I am Irish Catholic in Montana Territory. I know what it is to be unwelcome. He smiled grimly. Besides, my faith teaches that I should stand with the oppressed. You and Miss Maggie, you are being oppressed. Mrs. Hart, Maggie corrected quietly. Patrick's smile softened. Mrs. Hart, forgive me. After he left, Caleb checked his guns, reloaded, checked again. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from 1,000 similar moments. They will come at sunrise, he said. Wade Copper is a professional. He will do exactly what he said he would do. Then we will be ready. Caleb looked at her. Maggie, there is still time for you to leave, to go somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe. Not really. Pike will find a way to take my land, whether I am here or not. At least this way I fight for it. You could die. We all die. At least this way I die for something that matters. Something in Caleb's expression shifted, softened. You are braver than I gave you credit for. And you are kinder than you pretend to be. They stood looking at each other as dawn began to pale the eastern sky. Strangers who had become allies, allies who were becoming something else, something neither of them had words for yet. The sun rose red and angry over the Montana plains. Maggie stood at the upstairs window watching the horizon. Caleb was downstairs positioned by the front door where he could see the approach. Hank had left just before dawn to gather help. Not everyone in this town is a coward, he had said. Give me 2 hours. But 2 hours might be too long. Movement caught Maggie's eye. Riders. 5 of them this time, not 3. Wade Copper had brought reinforcements. Caleb, she called down. 5 riders coming from the east. I see them. The riders stopped 100 yards out. Wade Copper dismounted and walked forward alone, hands visible and empty. He stopped 50 yards from the house. Hard time is up. Come out, and we will make this quick. Caleb opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. He kept one hand near his gun. I am not going anywhere, Copper. This is my home now, my wife's land. You want it, you will have to take it. That can be arranged. But you will lose men, maybe all of them, maybe you. Is Pike paying you enough to die? Wade Copper smiled. I do not plan on dying today, Hart. No one ever does. A long moment of silence stretched between them. Then Wade shrugged. Pike is willing to make one final offer, $1,000, cash. You and the woman leave today, sign over the land, and you both walk away alive. Maggie came to stand beside Caleb on the porch. The land is not for sale. Wade's eyes flicked to her. Ma'am, with all respect, you do not understand the situation. I understand perfectly. Mr. Pike wants my water. He cannot buy it, so he is trying to steal it. The answer is no. Then you are a fool. Perhaps, but I am a fool who will fight for what is mine. Wade Copper shook his head. So be it. You have 1 hour to reconsider. After that, we come in, and we do not leave until this is settled. He walked back to his men. They conferred briefly, then spread out surrounding the house at a distance. Caleb guided Maggie back inside and closed the door. They are setting up a siege. They will wait for us to make a mistake, to show ourselves at a window, to give them a clear shot. Then we do not make mistakes. Maggie, I need to tell you something in case this goes badly. Nothing is going badly. Hank will return with help. Hank is one old man in a town full of people who would rather look the other way. Caleb took a breath. If something happens to me, you need to know where my money is. There is $500 sewn into the lining of my saddlebags. Take it and run. Get as far from here as you can. I am not leaving. Maggie, please. No. She set her jaw. We are in this together. You married me to protect me. I am staying to protect you. I am a gunfighter. I have killed men. You are a farmer's daughter with a good heart. We are not the same. You are right, we are not the same, but that does not mean we cannot stand together. Caleb stared at her. Then slowly something changed in his face. The hardness softened. The distance closed. He reached out and touched her cheek, gentle as anything. Daniel knew, he said quietly. He knew you were someone worth fighting for. Before Maggie could respond, hoofbeats thundered from the west. Both of them spun toward the sound. But it was not an attack, it was Hank Brennan. And he was not alone. Hank rode in with 6 men behind him. Maggie recognized them all. Thomas Grant, who ran the livery. Samuel Morris, the blacksmith. Brothers named Jacob and Peter Walsh, ranch hands from the spread north of town. Dr. Henry Miller still wearing his medical bag. And to Maggie's shock, Sheriff Tom Bradley. They rode straight through Wade Copper's line, forcing the gunmen to scatter or be trampled. Copper shouted threats, but they ignored him. Hank dismounted in front of the house, breathing hard. Figured you could use some company. Caleb stepped onto the porch, his eyes moving over the assembled men. You all know what you are signing up for. Pike will not forget this. Thomas Grant, a big man with hands like hams, spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Pike has been pushing folks around for years. About time someone pushed back. Sheriff Bradley looked uncomfortable but resolute. I should have done this a long time ago. Should have stood up to Pike when he started threatening people. Better late than never. Dr. Miller adjusted his spectacles. I am not much of a fighter, Mr. Hart, but I can tend wounds, and I can bear witness. Pike has gone too far this time. Caleb looked at Maggie. Something passed between them. Gratitude, hope, the beginning of trust. All right, Caleb said, come inside, we need to organize. The men filed into the house. Maggie moved through them, offering water and coffee. They were nervous, most of them. These were not fighters. They were shopkeepers and laborers, men who worked with their hands and avoided trouble when they could. But they were here, and that mattered. Caleb spread a rough map on the table. They have 5 men. We have 9 counting Maggie, but they are professionals. We are not. They will use that advantage. What do you suggest? Sheriff Bradley asked. We do not go to them. We make them come to us. This house is defensible. Thick walls, good sight lines. If they want us, they have to expose themselves. Samuel Morris, the blacksmith, flexed his massive hands. I say we go out there and settle this like men. That is what they want. Wade Copper is hoping for a face-to-face fight. He is faster than any of us, maybe faster than me. We do not give him what he wants. So we hide? Jacob Walsh sounded disgusted. We defend. There is a difference. Caleb assigned positions. Men at each window, fields of fire established. Rules of engagement clear. No one shoots first. But if the gunmen attack, they respond with everything they have. Maggie moved among them, making sure they had ammunition, water, food. Playing the role of quartermaster because someone had to, and she knew her own house better than anyone. Dr. Miller pulled her aside. Mrs. Hart, when the shooting starts, I will need a place to work. Somewhere with good light and clean water. The reality of it hit her. Men would be wounded, maybe killed. This was not a game or a story. This was real. The kitchen, she said. I will clear the table. An hour passed, then 2. The sun climbed higher. Heat built inside the house despite the thick walls. Wade Copper and his men remained outside, patient as death. Then around midday, a buggy approached from town. Vernon Pike sat in the driver's seat, his wife beside him. They stopped near Wade Copper's position. Caleb watched through a spyglass he had produced from his saddlebags. Pike is here. Probably wants to make sure his money is well spent. Vernon climbed down from the buggy and spoke with Wade Copper. Even from a distance, Maggie could see the banker's agitation. His arms waved, his face reddened. Wade Copper remained calm. Said something short. Vernon's shoulders slumped. Then Vernon turned and looked directly at the house. Even from 100 yards, Maggie could feel the hate in his gaze. He climbed back into the buggy and drove away. That is not good, Hank muttered. Pike looked like a man who just gave an order. Caleb lowered the spyglass. He did. Things are about to get interesting. As if in response, Wade Copper raised his arm. His men mounted their horses and began to circle the house, moving fast, kicking up dust. Here it comes, Caleb said quietly. Everyone to your positions. Remember, do not fire unless they fire first. We are defending, not attacking. The riders circled closer. 50 yards, 40, 30. One of them raised a rifle. Down, Caleb shouted. The window beside Hank exploded. Glass and wood splinters filled the air. Hank dropped, cursing. Return fire erupted from the house. Thomas Grant and Samuel Morris at the front windows. The Walsh brothers covering the sides. Sheriff Bradley at the back. The riders scattered. One man's horse went down, throwing him hard. He scrambled behind the animal's body, using it for cover. Maggie crouched on the stairs, shotgun ready, watching Caleb move between positions. He was calm, focused. This was what he had been trained for, what he was good at. The gunfire was deafening. The smell of powder filled the house. Smoke drifted thick. Then silence. The riders had pulled back, regrouping beyond rifle range. Anyone hit? Caleb called out. Just scratches, Hank replied, wiping blood from a cut on his cheek. Glass got me. Dr. Miller was already moving, checking each man. Minor wounds, nothing serious. Not yet. Caleb reloaded his rifle. That was a probe. They wanted to see how we would respond. Now they know we will fight. What comes next? Sheriff Bradley asked. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. They will try to burn us out, or they will wait for dark and try to sneak close. Either way, this is far from over. Maggie brought more ammunition up from her father's stores, boxes of rifle cartridges, shotgun shells, powder, and shot. Her father had been a careful man, a prepared man. As she worked, she saw Caleb watching her. When their eyes met, he nodded. Approval, respect. She nodded back. They were in this together now, for better or worse. The afternoon dragged on. Heat built. Thirst became a problem. Water had to be rationed. Around 3 o'clock movement again. But this time it was different. A single rider approached carrying a white cloth tied to a stick. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Truce flag, or a trick. The rider stopped at the edge of the property and dismounted. It was not Wade Copper. It was a younger man, one Maggie did not recognize. Mr. Hart, he called, I have a message from Wade Copper. Caleb stepped onto the porch. Speak. Copper says he respects what you are doing, says you are a fighter, and he admires that. He is offering you terms. What terms? You come out. Face Copper alone, fair fight. If you win, we ride away. If he wins, the woman signs over the land and leaves no more bloodshed. The house erupted in protest. Do not trust him. It is a trap. They will kill you. But Caleb just stood there thinking. Maggie ran to him. Caleb, no, you cannot. He looked at her. It might be the only way to end this without more people dying. Or it might be the way they kill you and take everything anyway. Maybe, but if there is a chance, even a small one, I have to take it. Why do you have to be the one to risk everything? Caleb touched her face again, that same gentle gesture. Because this is what I do. This is all I am good at. That is not true. It is the only truth that matters right now. Before she could argue further, he turned back to the young gunman. Tell Copper I accept 1 hour, just him and me. No tricks. If his men interfere, my friends in the house will cut them down. The young man nodded and rode away. Hank grabbed Caleb's arm. This is suicide. It is a chance. Copper is fast. Everyone says so. Maybe faster than you. Caleb's smile was bleak. Then I will have to be smarter. The hour passed like years. Caleb checked his guns, cleaned them, loaded them, checked them again. Maggie watched him, her heart a stone in her chest. She had known this man for less than a week, had married him out of desperation. But now watching him prepare to face death, she realized something. She did not want him to die. Not for her land, not for his honor, not for anything. Caleb, she said quietly. He looked up from his work. You do not have to do this. Yes, I do. Why does it matter so much? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his gun and looked at her fully. When I was a marshal, I killed a man. Jack Holloway. He had been beating his wife for years. I arrested him twice. The judge let him go both times. Said it was a domestic matter, not the law's concern. His voice was flat, emotionless. But Maggie could hear the pain beneath it. The third time I arrived at his house, Martha Holloway was already dead. Blood everywhere. Jack went for his gun. I went for mine. I was faster. That sounds justified. The law disagreed, said I had overstepped my authority, asked me to resign, so I did. And that is why you became a gunfighter. I became a gunfighter because I was good at killing and bad at everything else. But more than that, I became a gunfighter because I failed Martha Holloway. I was supposed to protect her. I had the law and the badge in the gun. And I still failed. He picked up his Colt and turned it over in his hands. I will not fail you too, Maggie. I will not let Pike take what is yours, even if it costs me my life. Maggie felt tears burn her eyes. I do not want your life. I want you alive. Why? The question hung between them. Why did she care? Why did it matter? Because he was kind beneath the hardness. Because he had kept every promise. Because when he looked at her, he saw a person, not a body or a problem or an inconvenience. Because somewhere in the last few days, she had started to see him as more than a stranger with a gun. Because you are my husband, she said simply, and I protect what is mine. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, hope, fear. Then boots on the porch. The door opened. Sheriff Bradley stuck his head in. It is time. Caleb stood, strapped on his gun belt, settled his hat on his head. Maggie walked with him to the door. Outside, Wade Copper was already waiting in the yard, arms crossed, confident. "Caleb," Maggie said, "please, be careful." He looked down at her, then slowly, deliberately, he bent and kissed her forehead. The touch was brief but warm. Real. "I will come back," he said. Then he walked out to face Wade Copper alone. The men gathered at the windows to watch. Maggie stood on the porch, shotgun in her hands, ready to shoot any of Copper's men if they interfered. Caleb and Wade stood 20 paces apart. The sun was lowering now, casting long shadows across the yard. "You are a foolhardy," Wade called, "but a brave one. I will make it quick." Likewise. They faced each other. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then Wade's hand moved, fast, so fast. But Caleb was faster. Two shots rang out so close together, they sounded like one. Wade Copper staggered, looked down at the blood spreading across his chest. His gun dropped from nerveless fingers. He fell to his knees, then onto his face. Still. Caleb stood for a moment longer, gun raised. Then he slowly lowered it. Wade's men stirred, hands moved toward weapons. Sheriff Bradley stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. "You all saw it. Fair fight, heart won. Anyone who wants to dispute that can answer to me." The gunmen hesitated. Then one by one they mounted their horses and rode away. Whatever Vernon Pike had paid them, it was not enough to die for. Caleb walked back to the house. His face was gray. His hands were shaking slightly, though he tried to hide it. Maggie met him at the door. Without thinking, she wrapped her arms around him. He stood stiff for a moment, then his arms came up and held her tight. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised." They stood like that while the sun set and the shadows lengthened and the danger for now passed. Night fell over Redemption Creek like a curtain dropping on a stage. The men who had come to help began drifting back to town, exhausted, shaken, but alive. Thomas Grant clapped Caleb on the shoulder as he left. Samuel Morris shook his hand. Even Sheriff Bradley, who had spent years looking the other way, met Caleb's eyes with something like respect. "You did good today, Hart," Bradley said. "Better than good. You saved lives." "We all did." "No, you faced down a killer to protect these people. To protect your wife. That means something." When they were gone, only Hank remained. The old soldier sat at Maggie's kitchen table drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "You should go home, Hank," Caleb said. "Get some rest." Hank looked at him with tired eyes. "Wade Copper was not the end of this. You know that, right? Pike will not stop. He has too much invested." "I know." "So what are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." Hank nodded slowly. "You are a good man, Caleb Hart. Better than you think you are." After Hank left, the house fell silent. Maggie moved through the rooms, cleaning up the debris from the gunfight. Broken glass, splintered wood, shell casings that gleamed like brass flowers on the floor. Caleb helped without being asked. They worked side by side, not speaking, finding rhythm in the shared labor. When the house was as clean as they could make it, Maggie put on coffee and cut slices from a cake she had baked the day before. Back when the world seemed simpler, they sat across from each other at the table. The lamplight cast shadows that made Caleb's face look older, more worn. The scar on his cheek stood out pale against sun-darkened skin. "Tell me about your wife," Maggie said quietly. Caleb's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. For a long moment he did not move, did not breathe. Then slowly he set the cup down. "What do you want to know?" "Whatever you want to tell me." Another long silence. Then Caleb began to speak, his voice low and rough, like he was dragging the words up from somewhere deep. "Her name was Rebecca. Rebecca Hart. We married in '67, 2 years after the war ended. She was the daughter of a dry goods merchant in Silver Fork, Montana. Pretty, smart, laughed like summer rain." He stared at his hands, calloused and scarred. "We had a son, Jacob, born in '68. He had Rebecca's eyes, her smile." His voice caught. "He was the best thing I ever made in this world." Maggie waited, giving him space. "I was working as deputy marshal then. Good job, honest work. I thought I had left the killing behind. Thought I could be a normal man, a husband, a father." "What happened?" There was a man named Jack Holloway. He beat his wife. I arrested him twice. The judge let him go both times. Said it was a family matter, not the law's business. Caleb's jaw tightened. The third time Martha Holloway was dead, Jack went for his gun. I killed him. You did what you had to do. Jack Holloway had family, the Pike family. They were ranchers, owned half the county. They did not care that Jack was a wife beater, did not care that the shooting was justified. All they cared about was blood for blood. Maggie's breath caught. Vernon Pike. His cousin. Vernon's family sent men to kill me, but I was not home. I was out serving a warrant. The men burned my house instead. His voice went flat dead. Rebecca and Jacob were inside. The words hung in the air like smoke. I came home to ashes, found their bodies in what was left of our bedroom. Rebecca had been trying to protect Jacob. She died covering him with her body. Maggie felt tears on her cheeks. Caleb, I am so sorry. I hunted the men who did it, found them, killed them, everyone. Then I resigned my badge and left Montana. Spent the next 5 years selling my gun to whoever would pay. Told myself I was doing righteous work, protecting the innocent. But really, I was just trying to, and did not have the courage to do it myself. He looked up at her then, and his eyes were full of old grief and older guilt. When Daniel wrote asking me to come here to protect you, I almost said no. Thought I would just bring more death, more burning. But then I thought maybe this is a chance to save someone instead of failing them. You did not fail Rebecca and Jacob. The men who killed them did. I should have been there, should have protected them. You cannot be everywhere. You cannot save everyone. I could have saved them. They were my family, my responsibility. Maggie reached across the table and took his hand. He flinched at the touch but did not pull away. You saved me today, she said. You faced Wade Copper knowing he might be faster. You risked your life for mine. That counts for something. Does it? Yes, it does. They sat like that, hands joined across the table while the night deepened and the candle burned low. Then Maggie spoke again, softer now. I need to tell you something too, about why I placed that advertisement. Caleb's fingers tightened slightly on hers. You do not owe me explanations. I know, but I want to give them anyway. She took a breath. My mother died when I was 12. Tuberculosis. It took her slow. Months of coughing and blood and pain. My father nursed her as best he could, but there was no stopping it. After she died, he brought me here, to Montana. Said he wanted a fresh start, wanted to build something new. But I think he was just running from the memories. He taught me everything, how to shoot, how to farm, how to survive. But he never taught me how to fit in, how to be the kind of woman this town wanted me to be. Her voice grew harder. They called me too big, too strong, too unwomanly, said no decent man would marry someone like me. And after a while, I started to believe them. When my father died last winter, I was alone for the first time in my life. The bank started circling. Vernon Pike started making offers. The town started whispering about what would happen to the poor Sullivan girl with no husband and no prospects. I could have given up, could have sold the land and moved somewhere else, started over. But this land is all I have left of my father, all I have left of my mother. It is the only thing in this world that is truly mine. She met his eyes. So I placed that advertisement. Not because I wanted love or romance, but because I needed protection, needed a name and a legal claim that Vernon Pike could not challenge. I was using Daniel Crawford before I ever met him, using his kindness for my own survival. And now you are using me. Yes, I'm using you, just like you are using me. You needed a place to hide, a reason to stay in one place. We are both using each other. Caleb considered this, then slowly he smiled. It was small, sad, but real. Then I suppose we are well matched. I suppose we are. They sat in the lamplight, two broken people who had found each other through desperation and death, and something passed between them. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. The foundation on which something stronger might be built, if they survived long enough to build it. Morning came hard and bright. Maggie woke to find Caleb already up, already working. He had spent the night in the barn as promised, giving her space, respecting the boundaries of their arrangement. But something had changed. She could feel it in the air between them. A shift. A softening. She made breakfast and brought it out to where he was repairing the damage from yesterday's gunfight. Bullet holes in the walls, shattered windows, the physical scars of violence. They ate together on the porch steps, watching the sun climb over the mountains. "What happens now?" Maggie asked. "Vernon Pike will not give up. Wade Copper was just the first move. There will be others." "How many others?" "As many as it takes." A rider appeared on the eastern road. As he drew closer, Maggie recognized Reverend Patrick O'Shea. He rode with urgency, his cassock flapping behind him like black wings. He pulled up in front of the house, breathing hard. "Mr. Hart, Mrs. Hart, I came as soon as I heard." "Heard what?" Caleb asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his gun. "Vernon Pike is claiming you murdered Wade Copper in cold blood. He has sworn out a complaint with the territorial marshal. They are sending a deputy to investigate." Maggie felt ice in her stomach. "But it was a fair fight. Sheriff Bradley witnessed it. You witnessed the threats beforehand." Patrick's face was grim. "Pike has money. Money buys witnesses. He is claiming Copper came here peacefully, trying to negotiate, and you shot him down without provocation." Caleb's expression did not change. "When is the marshal coming?" "Could be days, could be weeks, but when he arrives, Pike will have his story ready. We'll have people prepared to lie for him. Then we prepare our own witnesses. The men who were here yesterday, they saw what happened." Patrick shook his head. "Most of them are already backing away. Thomas Grant came to me this morning, said Pike threatened to foreclose on his livery if he testifies. Samuel Morris lost a contract with the town to repair the bridge. The Walsh brothers were told their ranch would lose its water rights. So Pike is terrorizing anyone who might speak against him." "Yes, and it is working." Maggie stood, anger burning through her fear. "This is not right. We defended ourselves. We did nothing wrong." "Right and wrong do not matter when money is involved, Mrs. Hart. Pike owns this town. He owns the businesses. He owns the debts. He owns the people." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Patrick. "Will you testify to what you saw, to the threats Copper made?" Patrick met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, I will testify. My faith demands it. Though I expect Pike will make me pay for it." "He will. Then I will pay. Some things are worth the turn." After Patrick left, Caleb turned to Maggie. "You need to go to town today. Show your face. Act normal. Do not let Pike think he has you frightened." "What will you do?" "I will stay here, guard the property, wait for the marshal to arrive. Alone. Alone is what I am good at." Maggie wanted to argue, wanted to stay and fight beside him. But she understood the strategy. If she hid, Pike would use it against them. Would say she was afraid because she knew Caleb was guilty. She changed into her good dress and hitched up the wagon. Caleb watched from the porch, his rifle across his knees. "Be careful," he said. "Always am." The ride to town took 30 minutes. Long enough for doubt to creep in. Long enough to wonder if she was making a terrible mistake. Redemption Creek looked the same as always. The same wooden buildings, the same dusty street, but everything felt different now. Hostile, dangerous. Maggie stopped the wagon in front of the general store. Inside, Mrs. Henderson was arranging canned goods on a shelf. When she saw Maggie, her face went cold. "Mrs. Hart, we were not expecting you." "I need supplies, flour, coffee, sugar." Mrs. Henderson did not move. "I am afraid we cannot extend you credit anymore." "I have cash." "Even so, Mr. Pike has advised us not to do business with you or your husband until this unfortunate situation is resolved." Maggie felt heat rise to her face. "What situation would that be?" "The murder of Mr. Wade Copper, of course. Everyone knows what your husband did." "My husband defended himself in a fair fight. There were witnesses." Mrs. Henderson sniffed. "Witnesses can be mistaken. Mr. Pike says he has evidence that contradicts that story." "Mr. Pike is a liar." The older woman gasped. "How dare you? Mr. Pike is a pillar of this community." "Mr. Pike is trying to steal my land. He hired gunmen to kill my husband. When that failed, he is using the law to finish the job. You should leave Mrs. Hart before I call the sheriff. Maggie wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she could see it in Mrs. Henderson's eyes. Fear. Pike had gotten to her too, threatened her somehow, made her afraid to help. She turned and walked out her purchases, unmade her anger burning. On the street, she found herself face to face with Vernon Pike himself. He smiled cold and satisfied. Mrs. Hart, how nice to see you in town. I was beginning to worry you had decided to hide out at your ranch waiting for the law to come for your husband. There is nothing to hide from. Caleb acted in self-defense. That is not what my witnesses will say. Your witnesses are liars, bought and paid for. Vernon's smile widened. Careful, Mrs. Hart. Slander is a serious accusation. You would not want to add legal troubles to your existing problems. My only problem is you. No, your problem is that you married a killer, a man with a history of violence, a man who shot down Wade Copper in cold blood while Copper was trying to negotiate a peaceful resolution. That is not what happened. That is what will be in the official report. The territorial marshal is an old friend of mine. We served together in the legislature. He trusts my judgment. Maggie felt the trap closing. Pike had planned this, every move, every counter. He had known Caleb would win the gunfight, had counted on it, because a dead gunfighter was the perfect excuse to have Caleb arrested, tried, and hanged. And once Caleb was gone, Maggie would be alone again. Vulnerable, easy to intimidate, easy to force into selling. You will not win this, she said quietly. I already have. The only question is how much you will lose in the process. Sell me the land now today, and I will make sure the charges against your husband are dropped. He can ride away a free man. You both can start over somewhere else. And if I refuse, then the marshal will arrive. Your husband will be arrested. He will be tried, convicted, and hanged. You will watch him die. Then alone and heartbroken, you will sell me the land for whatever I choose to pay, or I will foreclose and take it anyway. Vernon stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. You cannot win, Margaret. You are one woman against my money, my influence, my power. Give up now while you still have a choice in how you lose. Maggie stared at him, at his smug face, his confident smile, his absolute certainty that he had already won. Then she smiled back. No, Vernon blinked. What? I said no, I will not sell. I will not give up. I will fight you with everything I have. And when this is over, when the truth comes out, I will watch you lose everything. You are a fool. Perhaps, but I am a fool who knows the difference between right and wrong. Something you seem to have forgotten. She turned and walked back to her wagon, her heart hammering, her hands shaking with rage and fear and stubborn determination. As she drove out of town, she saw faces watching from windows. Neighbors who had known her father. People who had shared meals and holidays and hard times. But not one of them came out to speak to her. Not one offered support. Vernon Pike had poisoned them all. Maggie arrived home to find a young boy sitting on her porch steps. He looked about 8 years old, thin and pale, with straw-colored hair and eyes too serious for his age. Caleb stood nearby, rifle in hand, watching the boy with an expression Maggie could not read. Who is this? She asked. The boy stood and bowed awkwardly. My name is Timothy O'Shea, ma'am. I am Reverend Patrick's son. I did not know Father Patrick had a son. My mother died when I was born. Papa says God needed her in heaven. I think he just got tired of her. The bluntness of it, the child's matter-of-fact acceptance of abandonment, made Maggie's heart ache. What are you doing here, Timothy? Papa sent me. He said I would be safer here than in town. Mr. Pike came to the church last night, made threats. Papa said I should stay with you until things settle down. Maggie looked at Caleb. His face had gone carefully blank, the expression of a man trying very hard not to feel. Of course you can stay, she said. Come inside. Are you hungry? Always, ma'am. She led Timothy into the kitchen and made him a sandwich. The boy ate like he had not seen food in days, stuffing bread and meat into his mouth with both hands. Caleb stayed outside. Maggie could see him through the window, standing in the yard staring at nothing. When Timothy finished eating, she took him upstairs to the spare room, her father's room. She found clean sheets and made up the bed. You can sleep here. If you need anything, I am just down the hall. Timothy looked around the room with wide eyes. This is better than my room at the church. Papa does not have much money for nice things. Well, you are welcome to stay as long as you need to. Thank you, ma'am. You are kind. Papa said you would be. Maggie left him settling in and went back outside to find Caleb. He was sitting on the porch steps now, his rifle across his knees, his eyes distant. She sat beside him. He is just a boy. He will not be any trouble. I know. Then why do you look like someone just sentenced you to hang? Caleb was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. He looks like Jacob, my son. Same age, same build, same way of holding himself. Oh, Caleb. I cannot do this, Maggie. I cannot have him here. Cannot look at him every day and see what I lost. Yes, you can, because he needs protection, just like I did, just like everyone you have ever helped. What if I fail him too? What if Pike's men come here and something happens to him? Then we will protect him together. But you do not get to send him away because you are afraid. Fear is not a good enough reason. Caleb turned to look at her. When did you get so brave? When I married a man who taught me that running away does not solve anything. They sat in silence as the sun moved across the sky. Inside, Timothy was exploring his new room, opening drawers and looking out windows with the curiosity of childhood. That evening, Maggie made dinner for 3. It felt strange having a child at the table. Strange, but not bad. Timothy chattered about church and school and his father's sermons. He asked Caleb questions about guns and horses and whether it was true he had killed 20 men. Caleb answered carefully, honestly, not hiding what he was, but not glorifying it either. Killing is not something to be proud of, he said. It is something you do when there is no other choice, and you live with it afterward, forever. Timothy considered this seriously. Papa says killing is a sin, but he also says protecting the innocent is holy. How can both be true? I do not know. I have been trying to figure that out for 20 years. After dinner, Maggie taught Timothy how to wash dishes. Caleb sat at the table cleaning his guns with methodical precision. The domestic scene felt surreal after the violence of the previous days. When Timothy went to bed, Maggie and Caleb sat on the porch again. It was becoming their ritual, the quiet time after dark when they could speak honestly without the world watching. Thank you, Caleb said quietly. For what? For not letting me send him away, for being stronger than my fear. We are stronger together than apart. Yes, we are. He reached out and took her hand. The gesture was simple, natural, as if they had been doing it for years instead of days. They sat like that, hands joined and watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. 3 days passed in uneasy peace. Timothy settled into life at the ranch with the adaptability of childhood. He helped Maggie with chores, followed Caleb around asking endless questions, and slowly, carefully began to smile more often. Caleb was awkward with him at first. Distant, but gradually, almost against his will, he softened. Showed Timothy how to brush down a horse properly, how to mend a fence, how to read the weather in the clouds. Maggie watched them together and felt something warm grow in her chest, something that might have been hope. Then the territorial marshal arrived. His name was Daniel Rourke. He was a tall man with iron gray hair and eyes like chipped flint. He rode into the yard with 2 deputies, all 3 armed with rifles and grim expressions. Caleb was working on the barn roof when they arrived. He climbed down slowly, his movements careful, his hand nowhere near his gun. Mr. Caleb Hart, Rourke's voice was gravelly, worn by years of tobacco and shouting. That is me. I am U.S. Marshal Daniel Rourke. I am here to investigate the death of Wade Copper. It was a fair fight. There were witnesses. So I have been told. I have also been told it was cold-blooded murder. I am here to determine which story is true. Rourke dismounted. His deputies followed suit, hands resting on their weapons. I will need to ask you some questions, Mr. Hart. I will also be speaking with witnesses. I expect full cooperation. You will have it. Maggie came out of the house, Timothy beside her. The boy looked frightened, and she put a protective hand on his shoulder. Rourke's eyes flicked to them, then back to Caleb. This your wife? Yes, Margaret Hart. And the boy? He is staying with us. His father is Reverend O'Shea. Rourke nodded slowly. I will need to speak with your wife as well, privately. Anything you want to ask her, you can ask in front of me. That is not how this works, Mr. Hart. I conduct my investigations my way. If you have a problem with that, I can place you under arrest right now and conduct my interviews from your jail cell. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Rourke spent the next 2 hours interviewing them separately. He asked Maggie about the day of the gunfight, about Wade Copper's arrival, about the terms of the challenge. She answered truthfully, holding nothing back. But she could see in his eyes that he had already made up his mind. When he finished, he called Caleb and Maggie together in the yard. Timothy watched from the porch, his face pale. Based on my preliminary investigation, Rourke said, I have determined there is sufficient evidence to charge Caleb Hart with the murder of Wade Copper. Maggie's world tilted. Murder. It was self-defense. That will be for a jury to decide. Mr. Hart, you are under arrest. You will be remanded to the territorial jail in Helena pending trial. Caleb did not resist as one of the deputies moved forward with iron shackles. But his eyes found Maggie's, and in them she saw apology and anger and a desperate kind of love. This is wrong, Maggie said, her voice breaking. Vernon Pike paid you to do this. He paid you to lie. Rourke's expression did not change. Ma'am, I suggest you be very careful what accusations you make. I am an officer of the law. I do my duty without favor or prejudice. You are a liar and a fraud. Maggie, do not. Caleb's voice was sharp. Do not make this worse. How can it be worse? They are arresting you for defending yourself. And if you insult a U.S. Marshal, they will arrest you too. Who will protect Timothy then? Who will protect the ranch? The logic of it stopped her cold. He was right. If she was arrested, Vernon Pike would have free rein, would move on the property unopposed. The deputy snapped the shackles onto Caleb's wrists. The sound of metal on metal was obscene in the quiet afternoon. I am sorry, ma'am, one of the deputies said quietly. For what it is worth, I believe your husband, but orders are orders. They led Caleb to a horse. He mounted awkwardly, with his hand bound his balance off. He looked back at Maggie one last time. Keep fighting, he said. Do not give up. Then they rode away, taking her husband to a jail 3 days' ride north, leaving her alone with a frightened child and a ranch she could not protect by herself. Timothy came down from the porch. He was crying silently, tears running down his thin cheeks. Are they going to hang him? He asked. Maggie wanted to lie, wanted to comfort the boy, but she had never been good at lies. I do not know, she said, but I am going to do everything I can to stop them. That night, Maggie could not sleep. She sat at the kitchen table staring at the ledger where her father had kept records of the ranch. Expenses, income, debts paid and debts owed. There had to be something. Some way to fight back. A knock at the door made her jump. She grabbed her shotgun and approached cautiously. Who is there? Hank Brennan, ma'am. She opened the door. Hank stood in the darkness, looking older and more tired than she had ever seen him. Come in. He entered and sat heavily at the table. I heard about Hart, about the marshal. Vernon Pike bought him, bought his lies. Probably, but I have been thinking, asking questions, and I found something interesting. Maggie leaned forward. What? Remember how Pike said the marshal was an old friend, that they served together in the legislature? Yes. I did some checking. Rourke was never in the legislature, never served in any public office before becoming a marshal. Pike lied about their connection. So how do they know each other? That is what I wanted to find out. So I rode to Helena, talked to some people who know Rourke's history. Hank pulled a piece of paper from his coat. Turns out Daniel Rourke has a gambling problem. Owes money all over the territory. Serious money. Maggie's heart began to race. How much? Near as I can tell, about $5,000 to various saloon owners and card sharps. $5,000 is enough to make a man do almost anything. It is enough to make him look the other way while evidence disappears. Enough to make him accept a certain narrative about what happened with Wade Copper. Maggie stood and began to pace. If we can prove Pike paid off Rourke's debts, we can prove the arrest was fraudulent. Easier said than done. Pike is smart. He would not leave a paper trail. Then we find another way. We find proof that Pike hired Wade Copper in the first place. Proof that this whole thing was a setup. Hank nodded slowly. I might know someone who can help. Man named Samuel Chen. He works at the saloon cleaning and such. He hears things, sees things. Will he talk to us? For the right price? And if we can guarantee his safety? Arrange a meeting. 2 days later, Maggie met Samuel Chen in a grove of trees halfway between the ranch and town. The young Chinese man was nervous, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Mrs. Hart, Mr. Brennan said you wanted to speak with me. I need to know what you have heard about Vernon Pike, about Wade Copper, about the marshal. Samuel hesitated. Information is dangerous, Mrs. Hart. Dangerous for me to know. Dangerous for me to share. I understand. I can pay you. It is not about money. If Pike finds out I talked to you, he will have me killed. Or worse, have me sent back to China. I have family here. People who depend on me. Maggie considered this. Then she made a decision that surprised even herself. If you help me prove Pike is corrupt, I will give you a job. On my ranch. Legal work with legal pay. Protection from Pike and anyone else who might threaten you or your family. Samuel's eyes widened. You would do that. For someone like me, someone like you is exactly the kind of person I want working my land. Someone brave enough to stand up for what is right. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, I will tell you what I know. And he did. He told her about the night Wade Copper arrived in town, about the meeting in Vernon Pike's private office above the bank, about the leather bag full of cash that Pike had given Copper, enough for him and his men to retire on after the job was done. He told her about the conversations he had overheard in the saloon, about how Pike had bragged to his associates that he would finally be rid of the Sullivan woman and her guardian gunfighter, about how he had the marshal in his pocket and the outcome was assured. Most importantly, he told her about a ledger Pike kept, a private record of his illegal dealings, bribes paid, favors bought, evidence that could destroy him. Where is this ledger? Maggie asked. In his office, in a safe behind a painting of his father. How do you know? I saw him put it there once, late at night when he thought everyone was gone. Maggie looked at Hank. We need to get that ledger. That is breaking and entering. Theft. If we are caught, Pike will have us arrested. If we do nothing, Caleb will hang. I will take the risk. Breaking into Vernon Pike's office required planning, timing, luck. Hank recruited Samuel Morris, the blacksmith, who had skills with locks. Maggie insisted on going herself despite Hank's protests. I am smaller, she argued, quieter, and if something goes wrong, I am the one with the most to lose. I should be the one taking the risk. They chose a moonless night. Timothy was left in the care of Reverend O'Shea, who had returned to town despite the danger. The Reverend had blessed their mission, though he could not condone breaking the law even for a righteous cause. The bank sat on Main Street, dark and silent. Maggie, Hank, and Samuel Morris approached from the alley behind, moving like shadows. Samuel made quick work of the back door lock. They slipped inside into the musty darkness that smelled of ink and old paper and money. Pike's office was on the second floor. They climbed the stairs, carefully testing each step for creaks. Inside the office, Maggie lit a shielded lantern. The light revealed a room furnished with expensive taste. Leather chairs, a mahogany desk, paintings of landscapes and important-looking men. Behind the desk hung a portrait of an older man with Vernon Pike's eyes and cruel mouth. His father. Maggie moved the painting aside. Behind it was a safe, just as Samuel Chen had described. Samuel Morris knelt before it, pulling tools from his pocket. This will take time. Keep watch. Maggie and Hank positioned themselves at the windows, watching the street below. Minutes passed like hours. Maggie's heart hammered so loudly she was sure the whole town could hear it. Then a click. Got it, Samuel whispered. The safe swung open. Inside were stacks of money, deeds to properties, and a leather-bound ledger. Maggie took the ledger and opened it. Page after page of Vernon Pike's handwriting. Bribes to town officials. Payments to hired guns. And there near the middle, an entry dated 2 weeks before Wade Copper's arrival. Paid D. Rourke U.S. Marshal sum of $5,000 to settle gambling debts. In exchange, agreed to arrest and prosecute C. Hart for murder of W. Copper, regardless of circumstances. It was all there, written in Pike's own hand. Evidence that could free Caleb and destroy Pike. Maggie closed the ledger and tucked it inside her coat. We have what we need. Let us go. They made it down the stairs and were halfway to the back door when light flooded the bank. Vernon Pike stood in the front doorway, a shotgun in his hands. Behind him were Sheriff Bradley and 3 deputies. "Well, well," Pike said, his voice dripping satisfaction. "Breaking and entering. Theft. I will admit, Mrs. Hart, I did not think you were this stupid." Maggie's hand moved to her own gun, but Hank caught her wrist and shook his head. They were outnumbered and outgunned. "You planned this," she said. "You knew we would come." "I suspected. Samuel Chen is not as subtle as he thinks. I have had him watched for days. When he met with you in the Grove, I knew what you were planning. The ledger proves what you did, proves you paid off Marshall Rourke, proves you hired Wade Copper." "Does it?" Pike smiled. "Sheriff, arrest these criminals, all 3 of them, breaking and entering, theft, conspiracy. They will hang alongside Caleb Hart." The deputies moved forward. Maggie felt the ledger pressed against her chest, the only proof that could save them now about to be taken. Then a voice rang out from the darkness behind Pike. "I would not do that if I were you, Vernon." Everyone turned. Reverend Patrick O'Shea stepped into the light, and he was not alone. Behind him stood 20 men and women, townspeople, shop owners, laborers, people Maggie recognized, people who had been too frightened to speak before, but had found courage somewhere in the darkness. And at the front of the group, holding a rifle despite his missing arm, stood Hank Brennan's brother, a man named Daniel Brennan, who Maggie had never met. "What is this?" Pike demanded. "This is the people of Redemption Creek," Patrick said quietly, "telling you that your time is over. We know what you have done. We know about the bribes, the threats, the manipulation, and we are done being afraid." Pike's face went red. "You have no authority here." "No, but we have numbers, and we have witnesses. Enough witnesses to bring real investigators, real law, not the bought and paid for kind." Pike looked at Sheriff Bradley. Arrest them all." Bradley shifted uncomfortably. He looked at the crowd, at the determined faces, at the rifles and shotguns in their hands. "I do not think that is a good idea, Mr. Pike. I pay your salary. You used to. As of this moment, I am resigning." Bradley unpinned his star and dropped it on the floor. "I am done being your puppet." Pike's control was slipping. Maggie could see it in his face. The panic, the rage, the desperate realization that everything he had built was crumbling. He raised his shotgun toward the crowd. "Get back, all of you. This is my town." "No," Maggie said quietly. "It is not." She pulled the ledger from her coat and held it up. "This contains proof of every crime you have committed, every bribe, every threat, every illegal act, and now everyone will know." Pike's finger tightened on the trigger. Caleb's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Drop it, Pike." Everyone turned. Caleb Hart stood in the doorway, free of his shackles, a rifle in his hands. Beside him was Marshall Rourke, looking sick and defeated. "How did you—" Pike's voice trailed off. "The marshal had a crisis of conscience," Caleb said. "Or maybe he just realized that betraying the law for money was going to get him killed. Either way, he let me go, told me everything, and now we are here to finish this." Pike's shotgun wavered. He was trapped, surrounded, exposed. For a long moment, no one moved. The night held its breath. Then Pike lowered his weapon. His shoulders slumped. The fight went out of him all at once. "It is over," Maggie said. "You lost." Marshall Rourke arrested Vernon Pike on charges of bribery, conspiracy, and attempted murder. The deputies, seeing which way the wind was blowing, did not resist. Sheriff Bradley, despite his resignation, agreed to serve as temporary law until a new sheriff could be appointed. The people of Redemption Creek watched as Pike was led away in chains. Some cheered, some wept with relief. Some just stood in silence, processing the fact that the man who had controlled their lives for so long was finally powerless. Maggie found herself standing in the middle of Main Street, still holding the ledger, still trying to believe it was real. Then Caleb was beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it. No, this was you, your courage, your refusal to give up." She turned to face him. "I thought I had lost you. When they took you away, I thought I would never see you again. I promised I would come back. Promises can be broken. Not by me." They stood close enough to kiss, close enough to feel each other's breath, but neither moved, not with the whole town watching. Reverend Patrick approached Timothy at his side. The boy ran to Caleb and hugged him tightly. Caleb stiffened for a moment, then his arms came up and held the child. "I was scared," Timothy whispered. Me too, Caleb admitted. But you came back. Always. The crowd began to disperse, people returning to their homes, to their lives, carrying the knowledge that change was possible, that standing together could defeat even the most entrenched power. Hank Brennan clapped Caleb on the shoulder. You are a good man, Hart. This town is lucky to have you. The town has Maggie. I am just along for the ride. You are more than that, and you know it. As they prepared to leave, Samuel Chen approached Maggie. Mrs. Hart, about that job you offered, does the offer still stand? Of course. Then I accept, and I know 3 other families who would be interested, Chinese families who have nowhere safe to go. Maggie thought about her 160 acres, about all the work that needed doing, about how lonely the ranch had been for so long. Tell them they are welcome. We will make room. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Caleb drove the wagon. Maggie sat beside him. Timothy slept between them, exhausted from fear and relief. The stars were bright overhead. The night was warm. What happens now? Maggie asked. Now we rebuild, fix the damage, plant crops, live our lives. Just like that. Just like that. But Maggie knew it would not be that simple. There would be a trial. Vernon Pike would fight back with lawyers and money. There would be testimony and questions and months of legal wrangling. But for tonight, for this moment, they were safe. They were free. They were together. That was enough. The trial took place in Helena, the territorial capital, 6 weeks after Vernon Pike's arrest. Maggie testified about the threats, the hired guns, the systematic campaign of intimidation. Caleb testified about the gunfight with Wade Copper, describing in clinical detail how Copper had drawn first, how the fight had been fair by every measure. Samuel Chen testified about the conversations he had overheard, about the money that changed hands, about Vernon Pike's boasts and threats. Reverend O'Shea testified about witnessing Wade Copper's threats at the ranch, about the character of Caleb and Maggie Hart. And most damning of all, Marshal Daniel Rourke testified about the bribe, about how Vernon Pike had paid his gambling debts in exchange for arresting Caleb Hart regardless of guilt or innocence. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Vernon Pike was found guilty on all charges: bribery, conspiracy, attempted murder through the use of hired killers. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in the territorial prison. Pike's wife divorced him before he was even transported to jail. His properties were seized to pay restitution to the people he had defrauded. His name became synonymous with corruption. Caleb's charges were dismissed with prejudice. The judge publicly apologized for the miscarriage of justice and commended Caleb for his restraint in not taking the law into his own hands. But the real victory came 2 days after the trial, when Maggie received a letter from the Territorial Land Office. Due to Vernon Pike's fraudulent manipulation of water rights and property boundaries, all of his claims were being reviewed. And based on historical surveys, it was determined that Maggie's ranch actually comprised not 160 acres, but 240 acres. Pike had been slowly stealing her land through falsified surveys for years. The additional acreage was formally deeded to Margaret and Caleb Hart, joint owners. Maggie showed Caleb the letter as they sat on their porch watching Timothy play with a new puppy Hank Brennan had brought by. 240 acres, she said wonderingly. More than my father ever dreamed of. Enough to build something real, something lasting. Yes. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Caleb spoke again. Maggie, we need to talk about our arrangement. Her heart clenched. This was it. The moment when he would tell her the danger had passed, the debt was paid, and he was leaving. All right. When I married you, it was out of obligation. A promise to a dead friend. I did not expect anything. Did not want anything except to make sure you were safe. I know. But something changed. Somewhere between the gunfights and the trials and the nights on this porch. Something I did not expect. He turned to face her fully. I am not good at words. I am better at actions. But I need you to hear this. I need you to understand. Understand what? That this is not obligation anymore. That when I look at you, I do not see a woman I am protecting out of duty. I see my wife, my partner, the person I want to wake up next to for the rest of my life. Maggie's breath caught. I am not asking you to love me, Caleb continued. I am too broken for that, too scarred. But I am asking if you would consider making this real. Not just a marriage on paper, A real marriage, a real partnership, a real life together. Maggie looked at this man who had arrived as a stranger with a call and become something infinitely more precious. She thought about his strength and his gentleness, his honor and his humility, the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was enough exactly as she was. "You are wrong," she said quietly. Pain flashed across his face. "I understand. I should not have presumed." "No, you are wrong about being too broken to love." She took his hand. "Because I already do. Love you, I mean. I think I have for a while now. I was just afraid to admit it." Caleb stared at her. "You love me?" "Yes, completely, absolutely, without reservation. Even knowing what I am, what I have done. I know what you have done. I also know what you are doing now. Building instead of destroying, protecting instead of killing, choosing peace over violence every day. I do not deserve you. None of us deserve the good things we get. We just have to be brave enough to accept them." Caleb pulled her close and kissed her. Not the brief, tentative kiss of strangers learning each other, but the deep, claiming kiss of two people who had found home in each other. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, both were smiling. "So this is real now?" Caleb asked. "We are really doing this." "We have been really doing this for months. We are just admitting it now." He laughed. The sound was rusty like a mechanism that had not been used in years, but it was genuine, free. Timothy ran up to the porch, the puppy tumbling after him. "Are you two going to kiss all day? Because I am hungry?" Maggie laughed. "Come on, I will make dinner." They went inside together, the three of them, a family built from necessity that had become something built from love. 6 months later, the ranch had changed. New fences, repaired buildings, fields planted with wheat that waved golden in the summer wind. And at the far end of the property, a small cluster of houses where Samuel Chen and three other Chinese families lived and worked. It was a community now, not just a ranch, a place where people helped each other, where differences in language and culture were bridges instead of walls. Caleb had hung up his gunfighter reputation. He still wore his gun because danger still existed in the world, but he used it to hunt game for the table, not men. He had become a rancher, a husband, and to his continuing amazement, a father figure to Timothy, who had chosen to stay with them even after the danger passed. Reverend O'Shea visited often, grateful that his son had found something he himself could never provide: safety, joy, the freedom to be a child. Maggie had blossomed. The fear and desperation that had driven her to place that advertisement were gone, replaced by confidence and purpose. She ran the ranch with efficient precision, earning the respect of every man and woman who worked the land. But more than that, she was happy, genuinely deeply happy in a way she had never imagined possible. One evening in late September, as the sun painted the mountains red and gold, Maggie stood on the porch and realized she had something to tell Caleb, something that would change everything again. He came up from the barn, his shirt damp with sweat, his face lined with honest exhaustion. He kissed her cheek and sat beside her on the steps they had made their own. "Good day," she asked. "Good enough. Got the new paddock finished. Chen's youngest boy helped. He is a quick learner." "Caleb, there is something I need to tell you." He heard the tone in her voice and turned to her fully. "What is wrong? Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. That is what I need to tell you." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "Flat now, but not for long. We are going to have a baby." Caleb went absolutely still. His hand trembled against her stomach. "A baby," he repeated as if testing the word. "Yes, in the spring." "Maggie, I do not know how to be a father. I failed Jacob. I could not protect him." "You did not fail Jacob. Evil men killed him. That was not your fault." "But what if I fail this child too? What if something happens and I cannot stop it?" She covered his hand with hers. "Then we will face it together. We will do our best. We will love this child with everything we have, and that will be enough." "How do you know?" "Because you are already enough. You were enough for me when I needed protection. You are enough for Timothy when he needs guidance. You will be enough for this baby when it needs a father." Caleb's eyes filled with tears. He pulled her close and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I love you," he whispered. "I do not say it enough, but I love you more than I thought I could love anything. I know, and I love you. They sat like that as the sun set and the stars emerged. Timothy came out to join them, sensing something important had happened. Caleb pulled him close too, one arm around his wife, one around the bud who had become like a son. "We are having a baby," Maggie told Timothy. The boy's eyes went wide. "Really, I am going to be a brother. If you want to be, I want to be." They sat together, the three of them, soon to be four, watching the night settle over the land they had fought for, the home they had built, the future they had earned. Maggie thought about the advertisement she had placed so many months ago, about the desperation that had driven her to seek a husband she had never met. She had ordered a husband. What she got was a stranger with a gun. But that stranger had become her salvation, her partner, her love. And together they had built something better than she had ever dreamed possible. The night was warm, the stars were bright, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Maggie felt complete. Not because a man had saved her, but because she had saved herself. And in doing so, she had saved him too. That was the real story, not of a desperate woman and a reluctant gunfighter, but of two broken people who had found wholeness in each other. Morning came bright and clear. Maggie woke to find Caleb already up as always. But this time he had not gone to the barn. He stood at the window, watching the sunrise paint the land with gold. She joined him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I spent 20 years running from ghosts. 20 years believing I did not deserve peace or happiness or a second chance." And now he turned to her and smiled, a real smile, full and warm and free. "Now I know I was wrong. Now I know that second chances exist, that redemption is possible, that even broken things can be made whole if you are brave enough to dream on." We were both brave. Yes, we were. They stood together as the sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of night. Outside, Timothy was already up playing with the puppy, laughing with the pure joy of childhood. In the distance, smoke rose from the chimneys of the workers' houses. Samuel Chen and his family beginning their day, building their own second chances. This was home. This was family. This was everything they had fought for, and more than they had dared to hope for. The past would always be there. The scars, the losses, the ghosts. But they no longer defined who Caleb and Maggie were. They were just part of the story, not the ending. The ending was this: love, land, life, a future growing inside Maggie. A family built from ashes and determination and the stubborn refusal to give up. Maggie rested her head against Caleb's shoulder and closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For coming when Daniel asked, for staying when you could have left, for seeing me when everyone else looked away." Caleb kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for giving me a reason to stop running, for showing me that even a gunfighter can find peace." They stood like that until Timothy called them for breakfast, until the day's work demanded their attention, until life, ordinary and precious and beautiful, claimed them. And as they walked together into the morning hand in hand, neither looked back. The stranger with a gun had found his home. The desperate woman had found her strength. And together they had found everything they never knew they needed. This was their story. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And that made it worth everything.